My name's Matt McQuinley. I'm a business coach, consultant. I also do a radio show and some public speaking. I just realized after listening to the first part of your meeting that I'm preaching to the converted. I'm not even sure if this message is going to be as great as I would hope, because it's all about this. You've heard the saying that it ain't over till the fat lady sings. I'm allowed to say that, being big-boned myself. Okay? You can't call me big-boned. I say, Grandma, how'd I get all these bones in my stomach? But anyway, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. I prefer the great saying from the great baseball player and coach Yogi Berra, who said, it ain't over till it's over. I want to talk very briefly about myself. The only reason I'm telling you this is because I want you to know that I'm practicing what I preach, so hopefully you'll pay more attention. Okay, that's my evil master plan and why I'm doing this. I had asthma until I was 15 years old. I started swimming at 16. By 17, I went to nationals in swimming. They said I had a learning disability, yet I graduated top of my class in high school, at the top of my class, not number one, but at the top, in high school and university. I was broke. My family was poor white trash. My parents dropped out of high school to have me. My grandmother, on both sides of the family, were actually born in log cabins, believe it or not. Okay? So after I left university, I was about $140,000 in debt. Then I got to a point where I was well off. Then I got broke again. I was rich at 32. By 37, I was $2.7 million behind. I had identity theft to the tune of $2 million as well on top of that. I built a factory by the age of 42. I had my first child at 48. I sold my business at 50, and I'm in a position where I don't have to work anymore, so I get to do the radio, some volunteer work, stand up, and talk to great people like you guys, okay? So what I'm trying to tell you is I do believe it ain't over until it's over. I want to tell you a story I read years ago. This guy, at the age of 5, his father passed away. He had to take care of his younger siblings. And at the age of 9, his mother remarried. His stepdad died at 10. He got a job as a farmhand, because most kids get a job at 10. At age 12, his mother remarried, and he had a bad relationship with his stepfather. So at age 13, he dropped out of grade 7, and he got a job. He got fired. At 14, he moved out of his parents' house again, and he got another job as a farmhand. He got fired again. Then he got a job at 16 as a train conductor. And at 16, he decided, I don't like this train conducting thing. So he faked his birth certificate to enlist in the Army. At 17, they ran him out of the Army, and he got a job. He left that 2 months later because he didn't like it. He moved again, and he got a job as a fire stoker, the guy that actually shovels coal into the engine of the train. He got fired again. By age 19, he was married with 3 kids and started studying law by correspondence. Got another job as a fire stoker and got fired again. He practiced law for 3 years. He got in a fight with his own client in the courtroom and got disbarred. Then he and his wife and kids had to move back with his mom. He got a job at an insurance company, and I think we can guess where this is going. He got fired, okay? Then, at 30, he opened up a ferry boat company. And at 32, he got a job with the Chamber of Commerce. He did that for a while. He found out he wasn't any good at it, so he quit before he could get fired. He quit. So he sold his ferry boat company. He put money into the business making lamps. It went under. So he moved again and got a job with the Michelin Tire Company. And he got fired. At age 34, he ran a service station. By the age of 40, it closed. It went out of business. And then he moved again, and he was offered to run a station for free as a part owner. He didn't have to put any money in, just had to do everything and give a percentage to the real owner. That went pretty well for a while until he decided to have a gunfight with a competitor over his sign, placement of his sign. So he had a gunfight with a competitor. They have this gunfight, and he doesn't get shot, but the other guy kills an innocent bystander, so he goes to jail. And that's how he got rid of his competitor. It's not the recommended method, but it's how it worked. At 49, he ran the restaurant, gas station, hotel for a while that he was in charge of. And at 49, it burnt to the ground. He rebuilt the whole thing. But at 51, he went out of business. Then he got a job running cafeterias for the government. He did that for a while. At age 57, he got divorced. At 59, he remarried. At 62, he tried to open another restaurant as a franchise, but all he had to offer was a recipe. He went to 1,009 restaurants that rejected him, but 1,010 said yes. He ran that restaurant for 3 years until they redirected the highway around his restaurant, and he went under. Again. Now he's 65 years old, and all he has is his government pension, which is $105 a month. He drives around the country in his old beat-up car, trying to sell this recipe, trying to convince people to franchise. By 72, he gets a patent for it, and at 73, Colonel Sanders sells it for $2 million, which is $16.7 million in today's money, U.S., which would be, I guess, around 30 million Australian. In 2013, the company had 18,000 locations in 118 countries. It ain't over till it's over. Tell you another quick story. Death Valley. It's not called Death Valley because it's pleasant. No, it's one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. In fact, NASA does research there as an analog for life in extreme environments to figure out what life would be like on other planets because it's so harsh. It's a balmy 55 degrees. Even if you say it's a dry heat, it's hot. Okay? But you can't see that, guys, in the way, but the name of that visitor center is called Furnace Creek. So they call the creek the furnace. Heat kills. It says drink plenty of water, avoid hiking in the heat. It's beautiful, though. There's another sign of the extreme heat danger. I guess that's a bull that couldn't read, so he didn't hydrate properly. Moving on. They do a marathon called the Badwater Ultra. It starts at the lowest point in the United States in Death Valley. They run to the highest point in the continental U.S., which is Mount Whitney. It's 135 miles long, or in kilometers, about 217. Where it ends at above sea level, you're getting about 29% less oxygen than you do at sea level. Last year, 2022, a 66-year-old woman did it. She went through 3 pairs of shoes that melted. But it was only 50 Celsius that day, as opposed to the 55 that it usually gets to. So she had it lucky. Last year, a 77-year-old man did it. 250 kilometers. But all his friends gave him a hard time, Mr. Bob Becker, because when he was 70, he did what's called the Badwater Double. So you run your approximate 217 kilometers, then you get to the foot of Mount Whitney. You sleep for the night. Then you wake up in the morning, you climb 11 miles up Mount Whitney, where that is about 2,500 feet, I believe, above where pilots start using oxygen masks to avoid hypoxia. Apparently 135 miles isn't enough, so he's got to wear an oxygen mask. Then he runs down the 11 miles, and then what do? You run the 135 miles, or 217 kilometers, back for a round trip of about, I think it's less than 500 kilometers, but it's pretty close. So, what's the point of this? The point is, it ain't over till it's over. I don't know if you're sold, so I'm going to give you one more. Thomas Edison. We've all heard about Thomas Edison, right? He had 10,000 efforts on find the little filament of the light bulb, which was tungsten, and he had 1,069 patents, which is actually the real number. I looked it up. But did you know that at age 67, his entire workshop factory, which was 13 buildings, burnt completely to the ground? Back then, they used to call it gun cotton, and it burned really quick. At the time, it cost about $2 million. In today's dollars, about 60 million US, or about 100 million Australian. He was only covered for 238 grand, about a tenth of it. So, how did Edison respond? As the story goes, he's with his son, watching his entire life's work burn up, and he says, "Son, go get your mother and all her friends. They're never going to see a fire this big." And of course, his son goes, "Huh?" And Thomas Edison notices his son's looking at him like he's crazy, and he says, "Oh, don't worry about it, son. We're just burning up a bunch of rubbish." New York Times is there because you can see this fire from miles around. He's quoted that night as saying, "I'm 67 years old, and tomorrow I will start again." Now, I'm the leader, have been a leader in the past, so you put a brave face on when you're the leader. So you think, he's just putting on a brave face. What happens next? He gets up at 5:30 in the morning. He's all excited. He wakes up. He goes downstairs. He's talking to the family because they haven't been to sleep because they're just a wreck. And he goes, "Oh, this is wonderful. All our bad ideas are gone. We can start all over again." And runs out. 2 days later, what does he do? He invents a flashlight that can help him see through the smoke, because when the firemen were to put out the fire, they couldn't see. He goes, "Gosh, those guys need a better flashlight." So he invented one in the next 2 days. 3 weeks later, all his staff are back to work in different locations. The fire was in December 1914. The year 1915, 10 million US in revenue, which is about 417 million Australian dollars today. Bounced back a little bit. Okay? Why? Because he understands it ain't over till it's over. The Brooklyn Bridge is a suspension bridge that connects Brooklyn and Manhattan. When it was built, they were told it was impossible until a German immigrant named John Roebling came in and he said, "I can build it." There was all these reasons why he couldn't build it. They said, first of all, the technology for suspension bridges wasn't fully developed. Second, the ground wasn't solid enough. Also, it would have been 50% longer than any other suspension bridge made at the time. And there were all kinds of other reasons. But anyway, John Roebling knew he could do it, so he convinced the bankers and the politicians, to finance the project and let him do it. After a few months, unfortunately, there was a workplace accident. He got his foot crushed between a pillar and a ferry. And eventually, they had to amputate. And usually, as it happens when you amputate back then in the 1800s, tetanus set in and he died. So his son had to take over. Unfortunately, they had to sink these huge pillars into the ground, into the water, and his son got the bends, or decompression sickness. So now his son is paralyzed, can't walk, can't talk, can't move. So it seems like this is all over. He's completely paralyzed and unable to speak. It doesn't seem like this bridge is ever going to get built. The Roeblings were the only ones that knew how to do it. But it ain't over till it's over. Washington Roebling was still able to move one of his small fingers. So his wife and he developed a code where he tapped on his wife's arm to give instructions to finish this bridge. For 13 years, he tapped on her arm. She relayed his instructions to the workers, to the politicians, to everybody else to finish this bridge. When the Brooklyn Bridge was finished, it was dubbed the eighth wonder of the world. It was the largest structure in the Western Hemisphere for decades. And because it connected Manhattan and Brooklyn, this is the reason why New York became the city we know today. All the other little towns were able to coalesce, and New York City, as we know it today, was born. On September 11th, 2001, the bridge carried hundreds of thousands of people across in vehicles, things it was never intended to do without a problem. 150 years after it began, 138 years after it was finished, it still stands as a testament to the Roeblings family's willpower. Because guess what? It ain't over till it's over. Maury, at 51, while a professor, he started his own real estate company. 26 years later, he's the richest person on earth. It ain't over till it's over. Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison, released at age 72. 4 years later, president of South Africa until the age of 81. Why? Because it ain't over till it's over. Laura Ingalls Wilder, 65 when she wrote Little House on the Prairie. She finished the last one at 78 because it ain't over till it's over. Grandma Moses was 78 when she started painting. She created 1,500 pieces by her death at 101. Her painting Sugaring Off sold for $2 million in 2013 from memory, which she did at 99 years of age. Why? Because it ain't over till it's over. Joseph A. Campbell was 78 when he came up with the idea for condensed soup. Ben Franklin was 81 when he helped write the Constitution of the United States of America. Gladys Burrell had polio as a child, didn't become active until she was in her 40s. Then she became a pilot. Then she climbed Mount Hood. Then she hiked the desert. At 86, she ran her first marathon. She did her last marathon at 96. Why? Because it ain't over till it's over. This fella here did his first marathon at 89. At 100, he finished the Toronto Marathon. Why? I think you see a pattern. No? It ain't over till it's over. George Bernard Shaw was 94 when he wrote an award-winning play. Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. said, many people die with their music still in them. It's often misquoted. What he reminds me is there's two kinds of people in the world. They're the kind of people that are going to give up. They're going to think it's over. They're going to make excuses, say they're too old, they're too poor, they don't have the ability, they don't have the background, they don't have the connections. And then there's the kind of person who is not going to take those excuses. There's the kind of person that's going to be successful regardless. There's the kind of person that's going to fight to the very end. There's the kind of person that's going to succeed regardless of the obstacle, whether it's age, health, finances, whatever. My question to all of you today is, which one are you?